It's 70 years after people. In Pearl Harbor, the ship that was once the pride of the US fleet is now under a cover of green. A blanket of shrubs and grasses consumes the decks of the USS Missouri. Vines creep up the topside structures and over the massive 16-inch guns. Although its mooring lines snapped long ago, the Missouri hasn't drifted far from its crumbling dock. The mud of the shallow harbor bottom has kept the 45,000-ton Colossus close to shore. Surprisingly, the Missouri is deteriorating faster above the waterline than below. We know this because of diving explorations to the nearby ruin of the battleship USS Arizona, 70 years after it sank during the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. After decades underwater, the exposed parts of the Arizona have become heavily rusted. But below the waterline, the hull has been preserved by an army of multicolored sponges, featherworms, and corals.
Basically, the incrustation is like a scab that covers the ship that actually protects the ship from corrosion, slows the corrosion rates down. So when the incrustation is present, the corrosion rates are much lower.
And while marine life forms a protective layer on the Arizona's steel hull, the ship's wooden deck is covered with a layer of silt and sediment that offers its own protection.
The wood-boring organisms, which would normally have deteriorated the deck, have been kept out, and so the teak decks are very well preserved. If you brush away the silt just a little bit, they're smooth and hard and look like they did on December 7th, 1941, when the sailors were walking the decks.
70 years after it sank, it was estimated that the Arizona still held 500,000 gallons of oil, much of it trapped in the ship's fuel tanks and submerged compartments. 2 gallons of oil leak from the ship every day, drifting to the surface like a slowly bleeding wound. Will this be the fate of the USS Missouri? Or will it chart its own course of destruction in a life after